You are listening to Balloon Killers. I'm your host, Chrissy Riley, and each episode I'll be talking to someone from the world of cowboy mounted shooting, which is one of the most exciting and fastest growing equestrian sports. Hold on to your hats because it's going to get Western. Happy Friday, everybody, or whatever day it is that you are listening to this. On the day that this is published, I'm going to be in Fountain, Colorado at a 3-day boot camp shoot with Dee Chapman, Matt Jobe, and Jesse Anderson. And it's sort of returning to where I started, really, because my very first mounted shooting clinic was with Dee Chapman and Matt Jobe, and I believe Jesse Anderson was there as well. I'm taking Mr. Bear, and something that I'm really excited about is the clinic schedule, because in the mornings we're doing whole group work, and then in the afternoons we're breaking down into smaller groups, working on very specific targeted skills. And over the course of the 3 days, we rotate through all of those. So by the end of Sunday, we'll have worked on all of those specific skills, and hopefully there will be improvement both individually in myself and Mr. Bear, and then also together. Then on Saturday, the 22nd of March, the Colorado Mounted Thunder has a shoot at the Douglas County Fairgrounds. So I'm hoping that we're going to see some improvement there after having worked so hard at this clinic. I have been seeing some signs of significant improvement in Mr. Bear. At the Colorado Regulators shoot last weekend at the Double Check Arena in Eaton, he was very engaged on the rundown, which he's been all over the place on the rundown previously. He sort of feels like he's drunk when we've been running down the rundown, like he's kind of expecting me to turn through the cones or do something different other than just run straight. But on Saturday, he put his head down and he just went, and he seemed to know exactly what was expected of him for the very first time. And it felt so good to just let him go and let him do his thing rather than trying to micromanage him to stay straight, rather than knocking the balloon setters down. I've been really grateful as well. At that shoot, I was working as secretary, and it just reminds me of the one thing that everybody says about the mounted shooting community being such amazing people. As soon as I arrived at the Double Check Arena, Holly Gaskell and Larry Gaskell, I've got to shout them out because they just jumped right out of their truck to help me carry all kinds of things in. And then at the end of the shoot, Mike Parsons put my horse away, cleaned up around him. And then in the office, I had the Pershes, Avery and Rafe Persh and Tabitha Persh, and the Parsons girls. I had Jody, I had Laurel and Katie all at different times. So having all of that help, and especially from the younger members of our shooting community, is just such a gift and such a blessing. And it makes me so grateful for everybody. My guest for this episode was the first men's level 6 in Utah. JD Casperson was the 2022 Reserve Men's World Champion, the 2024 Western Regional Men's Champion. He has multiple state and regional overall wins, but the thing he's most proud of is that he is a family man, and his family is a shooting family. He is the husband to Hadley, and together they have 5 boys aged from 6 to 18 years old. How was the last shooting year for you? What were some of your successes and challenges?
We just have a great time every single year. You know, with as many of us as are shooting, normally somebody does extremely well and not everyone does well. So we kind of feed off each other's successes. And I almost have several different chances to do well. Even if I stink it up, one of the boys might be kicking butt, and I can consider that a win, you know. So yeah. One of our very best shoots this year, though, was Western Regionals down in Vegas. And for, you know, a lot of weekends, not every one of us is on fire and kicking butt, but that weekend was just amazing. So my wife didn't run. She doesn't like to spend the money on the big shoots. She'll do the local ones and just to have fun. But she would rather put her money towards something else, and I don't blame her.
Mm-hmm.
But so me and Trey's 16 and Judd's 14. All three of us ran. Judd is a 1, men's 1, Trey's a men's 4, and then I just moved up to a 6. So I ended up winning the men's overall. Trey was 4th in the overall, but he had a miss, which at a major like that, to end up number 4 in the overall with a miss is just absolutely amazing.
That's impressive.
I mean, yeah, and he won the men's 4 class. And then Judd won the men's 1 class and was number 18 in the overall. Trey took the open shotgun. So he beat everybody in the shotgun class, and I ended up number 2 in the rifle. But number 2 to Zane Chun, I just consider that's a win. So I'm good with that. But that was one that was just, every one of us did extremely well, and it was fun to stand there with 3 of us holding buckles at a major event like that.
Yeah, you really cleaned up. How about any challenges that you had?
The logistics of hauling that many horses and that many people and going distances and trying to make sure we remember everything, that is one of our challenges. But we've, the boys and my wife, I mean, everybody is super helpful, and we all just pitch in and do our part. We started doing traveling and doing some clinics this last year, and that kind of added a whole element to the competitions, and it's been fun. I think we've had definitely more successes than we have challenges.
I love that you do it all as a family as well. You really make it a family affair, kind of like vacation. There's that funny meme on Facebook, I think it is, where it's like, I'm a horse person. My only vacations are to horse shows and clinics. I'm sure you're feeling that right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't have a lot of vacation at work, but it's all used up on competitions.
So tell us about how you got into mounted shooting.
I saw a demo at a rodeo probably 15 or 20 years ago, and I thought, man, that looks like fun. But I had no idea how to get into it. I didn't see any information. I didn't see any follow-up afterwards. And so I just I was newly married and young, really young kids. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, one of my next door neighbors says, "Hey, there's a mounted shooting clinic. Will you come and take it with me? I don't want to do it by myself." And so I thought, well, I've wanted to do this for a while. So I think a lot of people know Kevin Coyle. He does K&E blanks here in Utah, and he puts on a ton of clinics, and he has started thousands of horses with mounted shooting. So I went down to a clinic. I took my oldest boy with me. Court was, he's probably 10 or 11 at the time, probably 11. And Court was going to watch, and I was going to take the clinic. And Kevin wasn't having it. He made Court, he's like, "No, you're in it too. You're taking it." And so we shot, I think we shot like 1,500 rounds at this clinic that day.
Wow.
And the horse I was using was amazing. She was only 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. He was just a kid. And she took to it like she was born for it. And it was just, from that day, I was hooked. So the next competition was about 2 months later. And I thought, you know what, I'm in. And so showed up 2 months later at the competition. And I look back at videos of that shoot, and I see that I've come a long ways. My horses have come a long ways. My riding style, my riding techniques, my everything. I can see huge progress. And what's really funny about that one is my boys, they ride hard, they ride fast, and Court rode my horse at that competition as a wrangler. And I remember he loped on my horse, and it scared the crap out of me. I was so scared that he was loping on this horse. He's 11 years old. He should know this by now. And you contrast that to today. I put my 6-year-old on a horse, and I'm like, "Kick his butt. Let's go. You got this." So it's fun to see the progress and see where we've come and how far we've come with it.
For sure. And it sounds like you had a similar start to that I did. I first saw it at the Cheyenne Frontier Days rodeo, and you also saw it at a rodeo. So, clubs out there, if you're trying to get new people into the sport, it sounds like the rodeo is a good place to do that if you can get into a demo. Did you have a background in horses before you started shooting?
So I grew up riding horses, but we just rode. We didn't do any sort of competition. We didn't do anything fancy. We were up in the mountains. We rode horses, and my parents put us on good horses. We didn't have that experience as a kid of getting bucked off and kicked and stomped on and everything. We had some solid horses growing up, and I knew the basics, and I did the basics, and I did most things, but I didn't know why. That's just what you do. And it was, let's see. So just after I started shooting, I knew I had a lot to learn. So my mom came over, and I rode with my mom for over a year, a couple times a week, and she taught me, because after I moved out, she started barrel racing with my little sister. So she learned a lot. Yeah. And so I started riding with her, and so she basically coached me on how to train and ride a performance horse versus just ride them down the hills up in the mountains and stuff. So I owe a lot to her for teaching me how to ride. So a lot of the things that I learned is stuff that I was already doing, but I would learn the why behind it, and then I could fine tune the technique and how I did it, and fine tune my timing and everything. It's cool to, like the light bulb that comes on when you're like, oh, that's why I do that. Okay. And, yeah. And then you do it better, it's fun. And it was cool to learn all that stuff. But once you learn kind of the principle behind how a horse thinks, and you learn the pressure and the release, you can teach them a lot of cool things.
So you've made mounted shooting very much a family affair, which means you must love the sport. What is it that you love about it?
One of the biggest things for me is that the whole family can do it. I've got friends that, they've got stuff going on the weekends with their kids, and mom and dad are split. Somebody's taking them to dance, and somebody's taking the other boys to football, and then basketball and soccer, and you're just kind of scattered. Mm-hmm. And with us, if we have a shoot that weekend, everybody's there. And if we don't have a shoot that weekend, then we can take off and go camping, or we can run up to the mountains for a pack trip, or we can all go do something together. And so seeing the boys helping each other and coaching and learning and getting better, it's been pretty amazing. And my wife has been a huge reason for the successes that we've had because she's so supportive.
Yeah, there's so many access points into mounted shooting with the Wrangler class, and then having, level ones, and then moving up with the wins. I think that having that access point really supports all different levels joining in and makes it really family friendly.
Yeah, it's fun seeing the kids kicking butt and doing well and learning, and seeing them get to be better riders. And back to comparing my oldest as an 11-year-old when we started, scaring me to death. Because he started to lope,
Yeah.
and kind of to where we're at right now. So it's fun to see.
It's been one of my favorite things as well. As the secretary for the club, I sit in the office a lot, which means I'm watching a lot of people do their runs. And one of the things that I absolutely love is seeing the Wranglers as they move into ladies one and men's one, and then kicking butt in that class. It's such a delight to see them accomplish and succeed, and how the CMSA Wrangler division supports them in just hitting the ground running as soon as they make that level one class.
Yes. Yeah, it's eye-opening for a lot of them, but it's cool to see how much farther ahead they are running as Wranglers.
What's your day job, and how does that work with or against your passion for mounted shooting?
It works against it because I have to work. That's tough. Yeah. So I got to show up to work most days. But I'm an electrician by trade, and I do service work. And about 5-6 years ago, I moved into more of a sales position at work, and it's been kind of nice because if I can get our guys booked out 3 or 4 or 5 days, I can take 1 day off or 2 days off quick as I can and get right back at it, and it's like I never left. It's tough, and it's a lot of time spent on the phone, but if there's a shoot kind of close by and I can blow out there as fast as I can on a Friday and shoot the weekend and get right back home and back to work on Monday, that's kind of been what we've been doing is quick trips, but it's so worth it. It's fun. But I enjoy doing the electrical work and figuring things out and fixing things and building things. And if I didn't have my day job, it would give me a lot more time to go shooting, but somebody has to pay for it. So I do have to go to work sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that pain. I much rather be a full-time mounted shooter, but that's never going to happen because I have to pay for my horse care and the vet bills and the farrier bills.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
So I know that you play many different roles. You're both a horse and people trainer, you're a husband, a father, a competitor. How do you balance it all and remain successful as a competitor yourself?
I get asked that. Hadley mentions it a couple of times a year. And the answer to that is I don't know. I really think my favorite part of doing what we do as a family and with all the other shooters around us, I consider them all family, but one of my favorite parts is seeing people do well and seeing people make progress. As I think the coaching part is kind of what keeps me focused on the patterns and the shooting and how we're doing. I'll look at all the stages in a weekend and just kind of glance at them, but then we focus on just the next stage. And then we pick a couple of key points on that stage to remember, like ride to number 4 or make sure you wait on this one. And anytime I tell them we need to wait on this balloon, I end up being say wait for number 1 and then wait on 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 and then it goes all the way through 10. But a lot of the coaching tips that I'm giving these guys are for me too, and I'll figure out the distances and do the math, and kind of make a course management plan from there. But it's kind of I feel like I'm as much committed in a lot of these guys' success as I am in my own. I've found when the boys run or when my wife runs, like I get a little bit emotional when they go out and do really well, and it's the same thing with the people I've been coaching and helping. A couple of the bigger ones, like the Armstrong family, seeing the progress that they've made. I mean, even Will, like he's almost as old as I am, and it's a little embarrassing maybe, but sometimes I get out there and I see him go out there and do extremely well, and I'm like a little choked up about it, or their kids. They're not even my kids, or we were down in Texas and Macy, one of the gals that rides with us, she did a victory lap, and I was over there like trying not to let anybody see me like tearing up about it, and but it's the same with my kids, and my wife. I love seeing the success and the progress, and I think the biggest factor of being able to balance it all is my wife, Hadley. She's more than amazing. The boys are very helpful for saddling, for warming up, for getting their brothers ready and helping them and cooling horses down. And it's definitely a team thing as much as we have going on, and having the boys help and my wife help. And then, and even these guys that I'm coaching, like I'll finish a run and they'll come over and take my horse and go cool it down for me so I can help the next person in or get my next horse ready. So it's definitely not something I'm doing by myself, not even close. So it's cool having the help that I do.
I love how supportive you are of everyone else and how much they support you too. Such a family affair, extended family as well.
Right. And the biggest thing that I try to do at all of our shoots is if somebody shows up and goes out there expecting to win right out of the gates, like you'll be disappointed. And if you expect to win every time, same thing, you'll be disappointed. But you've got to find that silver lining with every run or every shoot. You might go out there and fall off as you're going around the rundown barrel, but hey, your line going into those first 5 was amazing, So you got to find the positives and focus on those, and then you'll be back for the next one because you want more of that.
I think it was the second episode when I interviewed Ken Jardine. He really changed my perspective on how I analyze my performance at a shoot by telling me to focus on the good things. And so ever since then, I've been really focused on identifying at least one positive thing about each run, if not more than one.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference on the whole shoot and your whole attitude when you're done if you can find the positives.
Exactly that. What's the one shoot that you don't miss each year?
I would maybe start with the Utah State shoot because I'm in charge of it. It'd be bad if I missed that one, but
Yeah.
no, the one that we wouldn't miss every year. They have just it's usually a week after Texas over in Heber, Utah. There's a shoot. They've last past few years they've had $25,000 added.
Wow.
Multiple horses. It's got a great facility. It's got a nice covered warm up. And so being able to run multiple horses, and it's a little over an hour from my house, so it's nice and close. And the added money, that one's a fun one, and you're kind of relaxed a little bit coming off of Texas, the World Championships, and a little bit less stress. And you're like, all right, we're just gonna go have fun on this one. And that one's a really fun one. There's a lot of neat people around. And then the second one I would say is the World Championships in Texas. Some people say, well, it's just another shoot. It's the same as any other one. It's just there's a few more people. And I would have to disagree. Like there's more people and different people than you normally shoot with. And I've met some very serious lifelong friends there in Texas. And yeah, really, it is kind of another shoot, but it's not. Mm. And if at least once in your life, I think that the World Championships is a trip worth taking.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. I don't know if I'm going to make it this year, maybe next year, but definitely I'm excited about it. Everyone always has great things to say about that shoot.
Yeah, and that shoot, the people you're competing against, like, it's just cool. It's fun.
What about your favorite pattern? What's your favorite pattern and why? And what tips do you have for running it?
So I asked my wife this question, what is my favorite pattern? And she said, it's the one you're running next. And because I hear people all the time say, oh, I don't like this pattern. I hate this pattern. And I've kind of changed my mindset is if I see a pattern, even if it's not my favorite one, I just in my head, I think I like this pattern. This one's fun. I love this pattern, Yeah. But I kind of started narrowing it down, and I actually looked up the number, so we've got it. But it's number 84. But what it is, so there's regular rundown, and then there's a box basically out there that there's one balloon in the middle of the rundown, and then the other balloons are 20 feet out, and then the next two further up are 36, so the distance of a rundown balloon. But most people will shoot that one. They'll run in. So say you're shooting it right to left, they'll be about 10 or 15 feet to the right side of number one, and they'll run out, make a 90-degree turn, shoot 1 and 2, another 90-degree turn, shoot 3, turn again, shoot 4, and then go clear out to number 5. We set up patterns at our house, and I'll run a measuring wheel and see where we can cut some time off. And number 84, we always joke with my boys. I says, "Okay, guys, just run right up the middle with just a little wiggle in it." And where they're only 20 feet off the rundown, if you can get, say you get 5 feet off the rundown on each side, that's a 15-foot shot. You got to be quick. And your timing's got to be dead on. But if you run right up the middle with just a little wiggle in it, that pattern is, and you're taking a risk, but that one's fun because it's just some fast shooting. It's a rifle shotgun pattern, but if you run it like we practice sometimes, and you nail it, it's pretty amazing. But you can very easily blow it at the same time running it that way.
I love that you nerd out with your measuring wheel and figuring out how to cut time in different places. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I'll look at a pattern because on paper, the dimensions aren't real. Like it's not measured out like to scale at all. And so I figured out, okay, if this is a triangle, that means from here to here's this distance. And so I measure everything in feet, and I'm like, okay, that would make that an 18-foot shot. That's doable. We can do that. So wrap this pole right here. And I do a lot of math figuring out distances, and okay, you got to split these two exactly in the middle, and then you'll be good on both of those. And it's fun. We spend a lot of time studying and figuring out the course management part of it. And I think I don't know. I really like that part of the competition is figuring out how to save a stride here and there.
That's something I tell people as well when they ask me about mounted shooting. People who don't really understand mounted shooting, they think it's just, shooting 5 balloons, and you're done. And I'm like, no, something that I really appreciate about the sport and I really love about the sport is the thinking that you have to do behind it. Like you have to plan your pattern. You have to think about how your horse is going to run the pattern. For example, my horse is 16-2. One of my horses is 16-2 hands, and he is like driving a truck, like you've got to think about making room for that guy to do his turns because he's not very nimble either. So how I might run a pattern on him is very different to how I might run it on my 14-2 horse. And so those kind of math puzzles, they sort of light my fire, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you could have the exact same pattern and in a smaller arena, it's set up different. And so you'd run it completely different because it's narrower or longer, and different horses turn right or left better. One rule we have at my house, though, if you're practicing with me, is you cannot run a pattern based on on-hand or off-hand rundown. So, because a lot of people get comfortable with an on-hand rundown as they start shooting, and so they might run it differently so that they can turn the barrel to the right and then have an on-hand rundown.
Yeah.
And if you shoot with me, that's not allowed. You could run it because your horse turns better one way over another, but you can't run it to get a certain rundown direction. So you got to be able to shoot regardless of the direction. That's the way you're shooting it.
You've had a lot of wins, but what's the win that you're most proud of and why?
Probably, I would think that in 2022, I went down to Texas as a men's 4 and ended up the men's reserve world champion. And I did not really have that on my radar. I just thought I'm going to go down there and run as hard as I can and just chips fall where they may. And so as I'm watching these level 6s run, and I thought, wait a minute, I might have a chance at this. So as I was actually running, I didn't even fathom the possibility. But when it was all said and done, walking out of there in the number 3 overall spot in Texas was just, it was amazing. I think I'm still riding on that high. So yeah, that one. And then the men's overall in Vegas this last year was fun. That was, to take a win at a major competition like that with so many big names there that I've looked up to and I still look up to, that like they've been examples to me. And I just think it was so much fun.
I bet. So what or whom do you owe your success in the sport?
Oh, there's probably have to be a list. but definitely Kevin Coyle getting me started, because he let me borrow holsters and guns for months as I was getting going into it, and coaching with the horsemanship part of it to go get started. Hadley probably really would be number 1, because she kind of pushed me to do it. I almost didn't take the clinic because of the cost. And she said, no, I'll pay for it if I have to. You're taking this clinic. You've wanted to do this forever. you're doing it. She maybe don't ask her. She may regret that decision now, but it's too late. So it's what's done is done. But her support has been like the main reason that we're able to do as well as we have. And then the first horse that I started with, Ellie, she took to it extremely well, and she just got us started, and she was learning along with me, and she had so much patience for me because I didn't really know what I was doing. But having good horses and good people behind you, I mentioned my mom, Bonnie, when she came over and really taught me how to ride and how to communicate with the horses. And I did a ton of reading and books, and I don't watch a lot of videos. I seem to learn more from reading books than watching stuff. But she taught me a lot. Like, that's a huge reason that we're able to do what we do. And then Hadley's parents, Dave and Laurent, they're so supportive. They would take the younger boys when they were, they couldn't ride Wranglers or weren't old enough to run Wranglers, and they would get a hotel with a swimming pool, so the kids would just want to be with them all the time. They've gone to Texas with us the last few years. They go to Vegas. I know a lot of people hear my father-in-law yelling because he knows the people, he knows the horses, and he's just a huge supporter for the entire community. So I know he's out there, wants us to win, but he cheers for everybody.
I love that you celebrated so many members of your family. That's really special.
Yeah, it's fun. So, and right now we have 10 horses that we compete on, and then 3 more that are well on their way. We're just training them because we have to make all of our horses. We can't really go out and buy a mounted shooting horse.
Yeah.
And it's just, I realized that that's where I really enjoy the sport too, is the growth. Because this last year after Heber, there was about 120 entries there, and a week or so later, somebody asked me, said, "Hey, how did Heber go for you?" And I said, "Oh, it was almost so much fun. I've got this horse I'm training, Daphne, and she really wants to run, and I'm trying to get her to just take it nice and easy." And up in Heber, she was amazing, and we ran through on a loose rein on every pattern, and we didn't really, we just kind of landed wherever in the D's. She wasn't super fast or anything, but I wasn't going for that. But when these guys asked me, how did Heber go? I says, "Oh man, you should have seen Daphne. She was amazing." And I told them all about it, and I told them how well the boys did, and everybody kicked butt. And my wife says, "And?" I said, What do you mean?" She said, well, you took the overall both days. And I thought, well, yeah, but did you see Daphne? So that was kind of when I realized in my head, I thought, you know what? I really enjoyed seeing this new horse come along more so than winning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, that's winning, when you see progress.
What's a little known fact about you that the mounted shooting community might not know?
So all through junior high and high school and even into college, I ran track and cross country. So, and I actually went to college on a track scholarship. So I used to eat extremely healthy and exercise a lot, and I don't really do those things anymore. So that's a lot of people are surprised that I used to run and I used to enjoy it.
I was going to say, I bet that competitive edge from being a track athlete comes through in being a mounted shooting competitor. And I've been thinking a lot lately, I think I talked about this with someone recently on the podcast, about this idea of us being athletes as we ride our horses. And so I'm sure a lot of the discipline that you had as a track athlete has transferred over to being a successful mounted shooting competitor as well.
Yes, I 100% agree.
What advice would you give to a newer shooter? I know that you are training different people, your family and other people. What advice would you give to newer shooters that are listening to this?
One of the biggest things is not comparing yourself to others, because we don't know their horse background. We don't know their riding abilities, their training abilities, their shooting abilities. Like, you don't know any of that. So comparing yourself to other people is you're not gonna come out positive with that. Don't listen to the negativity. And if anybody around you is negative, then quit hanging out with them. Like, that's what the amount of shooting community, most everybody is extremely positive and helpful. And I try to be that person for people. Like, when they finish and they have a bad run, I try to be encouraging and help them out. And I'll meet them at the gate and be like, man, did you see those first 2 shots? That was amazing. That might be the only good part of their run. But part of what, like, when I'm teaching in clinics, is that you're not going to go out there and just have 3 or 4 good runs in a weekend. That's just not usually, it's not normal. You might, but that's not normal. You're going to go out there, your first competition, you might have half a run that's amazing, and the other 2.5 runs went to crap. They're not great, and then the next competition, you might have 3/4 of a run, or you might have a full run that's really good, and then the other 2 are bad. But look at the positive side of things. And I think I mentioned before, if you're making progress, you're winning. And that's all it's about, is if you can make just a tiny bit of progress at every competition, just a little bit of progress every week, eventually you put an entire weekend together where you're clean all weekend. But you don't want to go out there expecting that from day one and then being disappointed when it doesn't happen. Go out there, see where you're at, and then try to progress from there. And people progress faster than others, and that's just how life is. So with shooting, like, see your successes and celebrate them.
Yeah, something that I like about what you said there, well, there's a couple of things actually, but one of them is, one of the things that there's so many factors that go into mounted shooting, right? There's whether you're experienced with guns, there's whether you're an experienced rider, there's your horse. And that makes it really difficult to compare. While we still compare ourselves, particularly to other people in our class, that's the easiest comparison. There's just so many factors there that make it an unfair comparison, and exactly why we shouldn't do it.
Right. Yep, it is. And that saying, that comparison is the thief of joy, like, it is. Like, you might have done amazing compared to your last shoot, but if you're comparing yourself to other people, you don't think you did, but you did. So
yeah. And the other thing I heard you say, which I'd never thought about this before, but now I am going to think about it, you said 3/4 of your stage might have been a success. I've never thought about even looking at a stage in that way, of like, well, half of my stage went really well, or 1/4 of my stage went really well, but rather than looking at the whole run and saying, well, that was a disaster, what are the pieces of that run that you can look at and say, no, that actually went really well for me?
yeah, I mean, I had a gal a couple weeks ago that she missed her last balloon and missed out on clean shooter, and was just so upset about it, and I thought, okay, you shot 29 out of 30 balloons. That is amazing. Like, compared to last time you were out, 29 out of 30 is amazing. Don't let that one mess up or that one negative blow the whole positive out of the water. And with my boys, I try hard to, like, and the rule at our house is, and just during the summer, we have an arena in the backyard so we can practice here at the house, but if they ride 4 nights a week, I will cover their entry fees. And if they win, they pay me back, and they pocket the rest. And if they don't win, I've never said anything even remotely negative if they don't win, because they put the time in, and if you're practicing this much, you're going to do well. Maybe not every time, but you put the time in, you made an effort, and so there is no shame in that whatsoever.
That's quite the incentive to get the discipline to work hard, having to practice that many times to get their entry fees paid. I would certainly do that if someone was offering me that opportunity.
Right. Yes, yep, I would too. Well, and the minimum is 3 times. If they want to ride my horses, they need to be in shape. And so if they practice 3 times a week, they can still ride, but they're going to have to cover their own entry fees, and they don't. They practice enough that I'm paying for them. So
What are you looking forward to this year?
um, I'm just excited for the roads to be clear eventually, that we can travel and not have snow and ice, and but I'm really looking forward to just getting out there again and getting the boys. And I've got that new horse Daphne coming up, and I've finally decided to let her run just a little bit, and excited to see where she can go, and just being able to spend more time with my family, and do a little bit of traveling. When I've started doing these clinics, part of the clinic is I try to do them right before a shoot, like the day before, and then included in that clinic is coaching through the weekend. I really think that's my favorite part of the clinics is, okay, here's how we apply this.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing people finish with a big grin on their face, like, that makes sense now. I see how this, what we've learned in the clinic, applies to this competition or this pattern or whatever it is. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that.
Well, thank you so much, JD, for your time today. I have really enjoyed talking to you, and I will be looking out for Daphne and her success this year.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, JD, for taking the time to talk to me. It was such a pleasure. If there are balloon killers you would like to hear interviewed, please email me on balloonkillers@gmail.com. That's balloonkillers, all one word, @gmail.com.